girls, grab your beers.
Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Anthrax, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now here's your host.
I am Monty Heath, so1 Heath, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
Hey, what's up? It's John from Skillet, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle on Domain Cleveland Radio.
Fasten your seatbelts.
Incarceration, America's rock, metal, and tattoo festival with Slipknot. Falling in Reverse, Five Finger Death Punch, plus Marilyn Manson, 3 Days Grace, Beartooth, Knocked Loose, Lamb of God, Parkway Drive, I Prevail, In This Moment, and so many more. Report to the Ohio State Reformatory on July 18th through 20th, 2025 to face your sentencing. 3 days of rock, tattoos, and the return of the Haunted Blood Prison. Passes for Incarceration are on sale now at incarceration.com. Zombified.
What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle. And real quick housekeeping note, if you're watching us on YouTube, on Rumble and BitChute or Odyssey, please hit that follow and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever podcast platform you utilize, please hit that follow and subscribe so we can continue to bring you conversations like the one I'm bringing you today. I'm really excited talking to Mr. Trace Foster. What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great, buddy. All right?
Good, man. So, having some good conversation with you before we even started hitting record. And I was we
got to save that stuff, don't we?
Yeah. There was some good bonding, man, with our World War II fathers, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Yeah, I got a whole, we could do a whole nother podcast just on that. Some crazy things, you know? But
I know, man.
That's not why we're here, though, is it?
No, it's not. But, you know, it'll say a lot about, you know, the work ethic that we picked up or whatever from being raised by some of the greatest generation, though, you know.
And how about respect?
Exactly.
I remember one time I was probably 6 or 7 years old sitting at the dinner table with my mom and dad. And I remember smarting off to my mom about something I didn't want to eat. And I woke up against the wall. My dad backhanded me, and it was like, nothing was ever said. I just got back up, went to the kitchen table, finished my dinner, ate everything that I didn't want to eat. And guess what? I never did ever again in my whole life. Mouthed off to my mother.
Oh my God. You're definitely giving me flashbacks because I've been in that same position too after the dinner table and mouthing off. So yeah, I can relate.
You do that now, you're going to end up in court and they're going to take your kid from you. You know?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's where we're at today, and people wonder why the country is where it is. But once again, that's a whole nother another podcast episode.
You may have to do like 4 or 5 different side podcasts just to kind of fill in this one. You know?
I know. We'll have to get you back on and stuff. But speaking of childhood, though, man, I usually ask my guests that I have on for the first time. Do you remember originally what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I do. I've always wanted to be a musician from like probably 4 or 5 years old. I remember I had an older brother who was a drummer and played music, and I remember being a little kid going to his shows because he was supposed to be babysitting me. So what he'd do is he'd take me to his band rehearsals, which is where a 4-year-old kid needs to be. And it's always been music my whole life. I mean, I've never thought of anything other than doing what I do. And so I've been very, very lucky, very blessed that I am doing what I do. So, and I'm on a podcast, so this is great.
Yeah. And what were some of your early influences in music around the house?
Well, here's a great story. So my my brother unfortunately has passed away, because if he wasn't, he would be seeing this and calling me up and laughing at me, because I remember he come in to my bedroom one time, and because he didn't live with us, he was older, and he came in, and I remember I was listening to Captain and Tenille, if you remember who they were, like the 70s, And I remember listening to a song called Muskrat Love, and he walked in my room just shaking his head, and he took the needle of the record and he went all the way across it. And he said, "I'll be right back." And he went and he brought in the first Kiss record, and he put it on, and he put the needle down. He said, "You do not touch this till this side is over. If you want to go back to that crap you were listening to after this side, feel free." Never went back. Life-changing. I was probably 9, maybe. I don't know. I was young, but it was like life-changing.
You're going to love this then too, because it's like similar thing. I had an older sister, and I remember one Christmas she was big into like Leif Garrett, heck yeah, Stewart and stuff. So she was opening the Leif Garrett album and the Rod Stewart album. And then one year somebody thought it'd be a good idea to get her Kiss Alive. And she was like, "Ew, what is this?" And I'm sitting across the room and I'm just like, "Oh, give it to me," and then that started my journey.
Isn't it weird how just little things like that, and then and you remember that. I mean, we're talking, this is decades and decades ago, and that's just something that I'll never forget. It just really changed me and set me on a course. It really did. It just kind of, you went, all right, very cool, and I just my brother was a huge influence. He took me to see Kiss. I remember being on his shoulders, 1970, December 3rd, 1977. I remember the day. How crazy is that? And it's amazing, and I have a daughter. She's 23, and she's into music, and she appreciates classic rock and stuff too. So it's kind of nice to be able to do the same thing for her. There's no record just scratch anymore. But
yeah, exactly. No, I got two.
Go ahead.
I got 2 daughters as well, and I try and get them into my music, but it seems like Justin Bieber and that keeps pulling them back. But that it is what it is. But my oldest has gone to see Guns N' Roses with me and Kiss with me.
There you go. That's all you can do. You can lead them to the water and hope they drink.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a 29-year-old son who's way into Slipknot and stuff like that, and my 23-year-old daughter, I've taken her backstage to meet Billy Joel, and she's met, she was a little kid sitting on, Rick Nielsen and Cheap Trick's lap in the tour bus. She remembers all that stuff too, which is funny. So she kind of has the classic rock, and she likes bands I've never heard of. So I call her all the time and go, "Who's this band?" And she's like, "Oh, you'll love them, and they're really good." And I have no idea, of course, because I guess we're not supposed to. I don't know.
Nice. But it's great how music can bring the families together and all those, and makes those memories that you don't forget,
I was very introverted person. It really was. And I didn't say much ever as a kid growing up. But I tell you what, man, when I got a Les Paul and a Camaro in high school, I was pretty popular, let me tell you, because at that point I realized this is exactly what I want to do. My whole life changed from that moment. So.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you too. When was it that you picked up your first guitar and started playing, and who was like your early inspiration for that?
So I originally was a drummer. My brother was a drummer, so I started playing drums, and then I remember seeing remember the Doug Kirchner rock concerts at midnight specials on like Friday and Saturday nights that we used to have back in the 70s, and I would get up in the middle of the night and go watch those, because I was really little, and I remember watching the guitar players and the singers running around and the drummers sitting back there like in one place, and I was like, I don't really want to do that. And I remember having to tell my brother, it's like, I appreciate, I love you, but I don't really want to be a drummer. And I thought he was going to be mad at me, so he took the drum kit from my house, and I was like, oh, he's really mad. And he brought back a guitar and an amplifier. I was probably 11 maybe, and I really listened to. I was very, very lucky because he turned me on to 60s and 70s, bands that really did write really good songs, and they actually played their instruments. And so I was very lucky. I was into, of course, the Ace Frehleys and the people like that. But then there was the Jeff Becks, who I could never, ever play like that. But he would just get me really into all kinds of different musicians.
Nice. It's always good to have, I'm remember hearing the stories because I was too little to remember this, but like, and my brother moved out early when I was very young. But
Were you the baby?
my mom, yeah, I'm the baby.
Me too.
And and my mom would share the story of, you know, all of a sudden she'd hear my brother like yelling and think something was wrong. She'd run up to the room. He'd be sitting in front of a record player with headphones on. He'd be singing along to Led Zeppelin, you know.
That's so great. Dude, I played more tennis rackets growing up before I actually got a guitar than I can remember. You know, I think I was like, in my mind, it's really funny. I always pictured my band in you know, flying around the world with Mick Jagger and the Stones, and I just never thought anything else. I always thought that's where my life was going to lead, you know. And why not, right? Why think small? Always think big, you know.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I never made it past the tennis rackets in the garage and stuff, but but yeah, I was there, did that too.
There you go, though. Hey, sometimes you know, you got to know your limitations, though. That is the one good thing, you know, you got to remember.
Yeah. So what when you started playing guitar and then you know, eventually started playing out, what was like the music scene like where you grew up at?
So I grew up in Rockford, Illinois, the same place that Cheap Trick is from. So, and you know, I've known those guys basically my whole life, and it was a very interesting scene. There was, well, yeah, really interesting if you consider like a city that's like self-destructed. You know, when I was growing up, I couldn't wait to get out of there. You know, everybody in my family and all my friends knew I was going to Los Angeles right out of high school, and the running joke is I got my diploma in my right hand and my car keys in my left, and I just literally like. Right, you know, I got out of there as quick as I could. But you know, high school was great. You know, learning how to play music, playing in bands. I was pretty smart because I would always get in a band where I was the worst musician by design, because I knew the only way to ever get better at what you do is to be around people that are way better than you are. You know, and I was just very fortunate that I found some really amazing players. So I got really, really good at a really young age. So you know,
nice. And then you know. Playing out the early days, so you pretty much immediately, like you said, got your diploma, and then you went out to LA, and that's when you started playing out.
Yeah, I just I went out to Los Angeles and slept in my car for 3 months on the beach, and I was like, "Yep, this is the rock star life right here, boy. Let me tell you." And then you know, slowly things came around, and I started, you know, meeting musicians and people in LA, and you know, in the hair metal '80s, I remember you know, Sunset Strip. I was there for all the good times and a bunch of different bands, and you know, that's kind of how it all started with me. And then I mean, it's a book for sure, just to get where we are today. You know, it's a whole very lengthy podcast. You know.
Yeah. Well, you know, I you know, when was it then that, I mean, so you started making your connections there. You kind of already had like a relationship with Cheap Trick from back home.
Yep.
Did that play a role in getting you connected out in LA?
You know, it really didn't, because I just like, I went to school with Robin's Andrew's sister. So that's kind of how I knew him. And then like, you know, I used to work I was a busboy at a restaurant that Rick Nielsen's parents would go to. And, you know, I would always give him coffee and water every Sunday. And, you know, just that's kind of the connection, you know. But in the late 80s, I was in this band called Forgotten Child. It was a really cool band. And we toured with a bunch of other bands. We working on records, doing our thing. And then it just kind of stopped. And then the whole music just died, you know, and Nirvana came out, and it was just, you know, kind of the end of it. And then I just, I was kind of wandering around LA looking for something to do. And then that's when, you know, the guitar teching thing came up, because I got an offer to go in the studio, and I was like, okay, sure. Here's my thought process. I'll do this until something better comes along. You know, it's always the way I've kind of thought. And, you know, that's been 40 years. So I guess I'm still, you know, still moving forward.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I wanted to ask you too, then, how the guitar tech thing came to be for you, and what was that transition like? And then, you know, kind of getting to go on the road from that side of things.
Yeah. So, I'd kind of done in the 80s. I'd help friends' bands out, and I would go on the road and help them. They would go on the road and help me when I was playing. So, I mean, I was the guy, I was always that guy that when we started playing music, and we used to have these little recorders called the Fostex, which are 4-track cassette. You would take a cassette, and it would use both sides of the cassette to record 4 tracks. And I was always the guy that knew how to make things sound really good on it. So I knew I had something going on, like with the ability to, to hear things that I thought everybody could hear. And I guess they didn't, but a friend of mine was like, hey, there's this artist. This was like 1992, I think. And then I think, my band had stopped in like 91. And then so about a year, I just kind of wandered around LA doing odds and ends. But I went in the studio and I just realized that I had a knack for, someone's like, oh, we're looking for this certain sound. And I would go, oh, I think I know exactly what you want. I'd go tweak things. And they were like, oh, that's really good. And I was like, I thought everybody did that. I just thought that's what you did. And so that just kind of led from one thing to another. And then it was like, here I am. So it was, a lot of it is 99% of it is being in the right place at the right time. But the other 1% is the important part. You really got to know what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So from what I understand now, you're currently on the road with AC/DC.
Yep. I'm in Las Vegas right now, enjoying a nice, lovely day off.
Nice. And how did that relationship come together for you with AC/DC, and what's your relationship like with Angus Young?
Well, it was just a natural progression. I've worked with, you start off small and you just kind of work your way up. And I just, it's really weird because I've never ever had a resume in my whole life. And I've just never felt that a resume was that important. I always felt that just to do a good job and let people know that, who you are and you're available and your quality, and then that will always get you work. And that's kind of what's happened. I got the job with, that was Joe Perry's guitar tech for almost 10 years with Aerosmith. And that's how that whole connection came about. And then from Joe, I went on to AC/DC and then the Stones. I worked with Ronnie Wood on the Stones. And then, and Angus is great. Those guys are great. I just, it's the greatest place to be. I mean, I love these guys and they're super great guys and I'm having a blast.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So I was going to ask then too, because you mentioned working with Joe Perry. Obviously, That's how the relationship then with Tom Hamilton came to be, which we'll get into with the current project. But what was the early days like when you were able to? You were out helping friends, and then how did the gig come to be for Aerosmith?
Well, it was so I'd worked with Melissa Etheridge first. She was the one I went in the studio with in the 90s. And then I went on the road with her and she's amazing woman. And then she was like, look, she obviously realized I could play guitar and I could play keyboards. And she was like, look, I want you to be my tech. And I also want you to play during the show. So in my little offstage world, I had a big keyboards and guitars and it was really cool. I had a blast, and that's kind of how that started. And then our front of house guy, Steve, was doing a Joe Perry solo tour, and Joe needed a guy, and Steve was like, look, I've really got this guy you need to speak to. And I'd actually worked with Rick Nielsen right before that. I'd worked with Rick for about a year. And so that, they called me and they said, hey, who have you worked with? And I said, Rick Nielsen. And the guy's like, I'll call you right back. And about 5 minutes later, he calls me back. He must have spoke to Rick and he was like, we want to give you a job. So and I called Rick and I'm like, did you talk to them? He said, yeah, I told him you were the guy. So,
nice.
Rick always likes to say, I'm the reason that you've ever done anything. That's just Rick.
Nice. And then, like we were saying, then that ended up leading to, working with AC/DC.
I've done a million things in between, but it's a slow process. I mean, when you're in one tour, you usually get a phone call, and it's always when you get home and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have a job. What am I going to do? And then before you can even put a period on that sentence, your phone rings and then you're off on something else. I mean, I've probably worked with 100 bands, maybe. I don't know, a lot. I've done a lot. Usually it's just bits and pieces. A lot of people you stick around with, Aerosmith camp, you stick around. It's like you don't really want to go anywhere. AC/DC, you definitely do not want to go anywhere because it's just great people, and it's just you're treated really well and you just have a blast. Why would you want to go anywhere?
Yeah, exactly.
Living the life. This is people wish you could be doing this. I always say, if you could go back to the 15-year-old me and tell me what's in store, I'd be like, you're crazy. That's amazing. So it's very cool.
Yeah, I would say, man. And then some of the other jobs I've read, you worked with Bon Jovi, obviously your relationship with Cheap Trick, and then even Smashing Pumpkins, to name a few.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was funny for a while after Melissa. I was with Melissa for 13 years, but she wouldn't tour all the time. So when she wasn't working, I would get another job, and I must have worked for every single female artist. I've worked from everybody from Sheryl Crow to Jewel to Paula Cole. I mean, you pretty much name an artist that was a female in that. Tracy Chapman. I worked for them all in that era. So it's like, I don't know why. It just seemed to be 10 years of my life. So. But
well, obviously a good reputation out there then, people,
it's very important,
like you said, as soon as, an obvious good work ethic as well. But like you said, as soon as you were like, oh no, I'm off tour, what am I going to do? The phone rings, and that's not a bad thing.
And I always tell people, I'm not the smartest guitar tech. I'm not the best guitar tech, but I just have the ability to communicate, which is important as well. And I get along with people, and I don't drink. So I don't drink or do drugs. I don't have any of those issues. So I'm just, I just
Awesome.
like to think that I'm able to, to take care of business. And so I think that's why I'm here.
Yeah. I'd say that definitely makes a huge difference. I just celebrated 16 years sobriety. But early on, when I got involved in the music here locally in Cleveland, I used to book shows and put shows together. And, it was just an excuse to get into the drinking and the drugs and the women,
Absolutely.
and that's not a good business model,
No. So I've just celebrated 23 years sobriety in April. So good for you. It's
Awesome.
amazing, right?
Awesome.
So good. So speaking of Cleveland, I got to tell you one thing. I have a bass guitar at my house that has a big chunk out of the headstock that we can thank the pole at Peabody's for in the late 80s.
Awesome. Yeah. Peabody's
and took the top of the headstock right off. To this day,
that was the one when it was down in the flats still.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We share many stories with many people I talked to on here about that pole at Peabody's down in the flats.
I think it was, people are always trying to explain to me why it was there. And I'm like, I think they did it just to mess with people.
Yeah. That was, And like you were saying too, it's just like, I look at, my relationships with people in the music industry today, now being sober. It's like, there's so many sober brothers that I'm friends with now. And, whenever they come through Cleveland, I get a call. Hey man, we're playing tonight. You want to come out and hang out? And it's just like, when I was drinking and conniving, it was just like, how can I get into the show? And how can I do, and now it's like, I'm being invited backstage, I'm welcome. I'm not drinking the beer rider and everything, it's a beautiful thing.
It's so funny because I always tell people, my worst day sober is 100 times better than my best day messed up. It really is, because I don't know about you. I'm assuming we share the same story. That's our third other podcast. It's like, I just got tired of telling my friends I'm sorry, because of being that guy. And I didn't want to be that guy. And in my life, I really wanted more focus, and I wanted to be, I wanted to be doing what I'm doing now. And you have to really be on top of things to make things happen, mover and a shaker kind of thing. But I think it was Melissa Etheridge that really started me on this, because I remember sitting down with her one night, and I was obviously hammered and talking to her, and she said something about, have you ever thought you might have a problem? And that's when I just kind of went, oh, I guess I'm not hiding it. Because, you think you're hiding it from everybody.
Yeah.
You ain't,
Yeah.
So, yeah, the day my daughter was born 23 years ago was the last drink I've ever had. Done.
Nice. I wish I would have picked it up that quick, man. My daughters, unfortunately, the early years of their life, they got to deal with, drunk addict dad. But
terrible,
after my last deployment overseas, that was my wake up call. And I came home, and I was just like, after seeing some brothers go home in a flag draped coffin, I was like, what kind of legacy am I going to leave for my daughters? So that helped me, wake up and start my sobriety journey. And so,
it's a wake up call
ever since. Yeah.
It's that moment. People say, well, how did you know it was time to do this? I was like, oh my gosh. How many more times can you get hit over the head with it's time? And then something like, when Melissa's saying that, somebody who I had nothing but respect for, who obviously I felt at that point I was letting her down, like I said, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be a guy that no one wants to be around because they're just stupid, I don't even remember half of it. So I'm sure it wasn't good,
Yeah, exactly. And then And the beautiful thing is too, like when some of my brothers come through town now, you know, and if they have some time or some time off, and it's not a rush schedule, I get to pick them up and take them for a short little ride down to Akron, and we go to Dr. Bob's and all that stuff.
That's
so
fantastic, man. Well, I think we have a Close Enemies as a show coming up in Ohio, but we haven't booked Cleveland yet, but I'm excited. I know it's coming. So I just, cause Cleveland really does rock, you know.
I'll have to try and connect with you then, you know, for sure.
Yeah, man. I married me an Ohio girl, so I have a very good connection to Ohio. So there you go.
Good to hear, man.
My wife's from Columbus.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm born and raised here in Cleveland, but I hit a lot of those Danny Wimmer festivals down in Columbus. You know, those are always a good time as well.
I mean, Ohio's a great rockin' state for sure.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
and then
Hall of Fame there. There you go.
Yep. And then obviously, you know, what we're supposed to be talking about out here. I don't want to get in trouble with Shauna and everything. But,
she's tough too.
Yeah, I know she is. And if I want to hang out with you when you come to Cleveland, I got to keep her happy as well. So,
that's right.
But yeah, so, you know, obviously the relationship at your time in Aerosmith, you formed a relationship with Tom Hamilton, but how did your relationship come together with the other members of Close Enemies?
So I'll tell you how all this started. So about in the early 80s, a friend of mine, this guy, Gary Steer, I had went to Atlanta for a year to play in this band and from LA, and this guy, Gary, and I had become, you know, in the same band, a great songwriter, great friend. And him and I have always been friends. And I ended up going back to LA. Anyways, fast forward years later. And the same thing, I was talking to him one day. This was probably 5-6 years ago. And I was like, you know what? We ain't getting any younger. And I really think that I really want to try something musically again. And he's like, you know what? Me too. He said, why don't let's just start writing. We could write. Technology allows you to write like this. You know, we just get online and start writing and send files back and forth and work on stuff. So we did like a couple songs, and we were like, this is really good. And so my first phone call was to Peter Stroud, who, you know, being from Atlanta as well, you know, knew Gary, and I'd known Peter. So it's like, okay, let's call Peter and see what he said. I just sent him the 2 ideas that we had. And he was like, I'm in, let's do this. And so it was like, okay. And then he's like, yeah, I got this drummer, Tony Brock, you know, and it was like, the Tony Brock? I was like, okay, great. So, you know, and then right around that same time, we were doing the Vegas residency in Las Vegas with Aerosmith. And I remember talking to Tom, because I knew Tom had some songs that he was talking about really wanting to get recorded. So I told him, I said, look, you know, because I'd play with those guys all the time. And I was like, look, if you want, I can get a couple of really good guys and we can come up to Boston and record your songs and get you your demos done that you want, you know, for new Aerosmith stuff. And he was like, okay, that'd be really cool. So we did that. So me, Peter, and Tony went to Boston and played with Tom for like 4 or 5 days, got all his stuff hashed out and some good stuff, you know. So then we came back. And then we started thinking about this band again. And originally, Tom wasn't the bass player in the band. And then I was like, you know what? Tom was like, just talking to Tom. Then it was like, okay, we finally realized we needed another bass player. And I was like, I'm literally, Aerosmith's getting ready to go on stage. I'm looking at Tom and I went, best bass player I know is 5 feet over there. And I just went and talked to him. I said, you know, because he knows we can all play because we were just playing together. I said, I got this, you know, we have this other thing I told you about. What do you think? And he's like, send me some songs. And I sent him the songs, and within an hour, he called me back. He said, I'm in, let's do this. And so that's kind of how it all started. It was just one of those, everybody in this band still has something to say. You know, we all felt like we have one more musical thing that we want to do. We're not done, you know? And that's kind of the guys that I look for, who still has something to say and still wants to do this, you know? And that's before we got Chase. And that's just, you know, so Gary was doing all the, you know, the vocal stuff at that moment and, you know, recording, and we're getting it all together. And then that's how all that started, the original nucleus of the band.
Nice. And then were you working with Aerosmith at the time? Were you set to to go on that final tour before that got?
I was. So I was doing the Stones. I was working on the new Stones record. And so I had to have a guy fill in the first like 10 days before I could get back on the road because I was finishing the Stones record. And then I get a phone call from the guitar tech, Greg, and he's like, it's done. They just canceled the tour. Steven hurt himself. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. So yeah, so I didn't get to do the 3 shows they did. So I was kind of bummed out about that. That was really sad. But yeah, I mean, I'd done the rehearsals and then I had to leave to, go do the other thing. And then it just, it was sudden, that's how, how life is though. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then were you on that most recent Stones tour as well?
No, I was doing AC/DC. I did the Stones. No, the one I did was the Stones in Europe. I didn't do the American part of it because I was doing AC/DC.
Yeah, because I know they came through Cleveland, and that was.
Well, I was able to do both because they flip flopped years. So I was jumping back and forth, but then they canceled. They had to cancel a summer because I forget why, but so then they decided to push it back a year. So put the Stones right on top of AC/DC. So I had to make the choice, and I've been with Angus so long. It's like I wouldn't imagine being anywhere else.
Yeah, gotcha. And then going back to Close Enemies, like what who came up with the name? Like what was the inspiration for that?
So this is a true story. I mean, we were searching for a name, right? And then it's like we were like every name we'd come up with, we go, that's a great name. We Google search it, and there's like 5 bands with that name. And you're like, and they've done a record or something. So you're like, okay, that's never going to work. And we were making stuff up like crap eating donkeys, and we go put that in there, and somebody's got a band called Crap Eating Donkeys. It's just like it was just we just were like, it's just never going to happen. And then Peter's wife Lynn, they were watching, I don't know, they were watching the Godfather, and Lynn's like, Close Enemies, keep your enemies close. Close Enemies, you guys should think about that name. And I remember when Peter was like, hey, Lynn said we should be called Close Enemies, we were all just like, wow, that's really cool. And then so we're like, there's got to be 15 bands with that name. And we put it in, and we're like, wow, there's the name, And I was talking to a friend of mine who's got a band, and they're doing a record, and they don't have a name. And he goes, what the hardest part about this band thing is? And I knew what he was going to say. He goes, finding a name. Yeah. They're all taken. I'm telling you, it's so weird.
Yeah, just imagine the days before Google,
Well, you could get away with it back then. There could be 7 Iron Maidens in the world, until, of course, one of them got really big, and then they just, cease and desisted all the rest of them. But you didn't know, you had no idea.
Yeah, exactly. And then, going back to, you mentioned bringing Chasen on board. I read that there's like a Mickey Mouse Club tie to the band.
It's so funny because I don't know if he wanted us to know that originally, because like he said, he goes, people either think it's really cool or it's like it's a curse. But yeah, he was he came in right after he came in and hosted the show. So there's videos of him and Christine and Justin and all these. I mean, all of them. They're Brittany. They're all friends. They're all kids. And he's a little bit older than them. And so he hosted a show for a couple of years, and then he still does stuff with Disney, and he's he's been an actor. He's done everything, that guy. And I remember the first time that that I actually heard him really sing, it was just like, I don't know why this guy isn't as big as all those other guys, because he's so phenomenal. And then that's just the way life is. But we'll take him because he's amazing. People are starting to find out just how great he really is.
Well, what's great too is like, I don't know too many of them that went on to actually rock out.
That's what
he's all poppy stuff. So it's be good to.
I don't know if you read the story of how we actually found him. The truth was, the engineer that sent us the demo for Chasin was like, look, sent it to Tom. And he said, look, this isn't really your style of music, but this guy's an amazing singer. And so Tom sent it to me and he said, what do you think? And I remember listening to it and I was like, this is kind of Justin Timberlake. Like, we didn't know he was Mickey Mouse Club alumni at that point. It's like, yeah, it's just not what we do, and then so I just kind of moved it to the side and we just kept looking for people. And then it probably took 3 more months before I circled back around and listened to the whole song. And there was an amazing rock voice in the middle of this song. And I just called him. I was going to ask him who that guy was in the middle. That's who we wanted. And he was like, that's all me. And it was like, I wish I'd listened to that 3 months ago, because holy, that guy, phew. So he came in and, demoed some of our stuff, and it didn't take but about 2 seconds before we were all like, we found our singer, he's that good. And we did, the first show we did before any music was released was in Nashville in October. And I remember he was really nervous about doing any of the Aerosmith stuff, because he was like, everyone's going to compare me to Steven. Everyone's going to compare me. They're going to hate me. They're going to hate me. And sure enough, that's what he got. Everyone hated him. It's like, oh, this guy's not Steven Tyler. And I'm just like, wait till our music comes out. And as soon as our music came out, everyone just like flip-flopped. Oh, this guy's unbelievable. And that's just how it is. You're going to get those comparisons,
Yeah, you gotta go through that criticism but win them over over time with the talent. And then I wanted to ask about the single. Now, you talked about some of the songs that you had in the mix that that started this whole collaboration. Was one of those actually your single, Sweet Baby Jesus?
Sweet Baby Jesus was actually written before Chasin. It was written before. I think it was just Gary, I, and Peter that was one of those things that I had this riff and we just sat around. The great thing about this band is every one of us are songwriters. So you got 5 guys in the band and Gary. You got 6 guys who get together at Peter's house in Atlanta, and one of us will throw an idea on the table and go, look, I've got this, I've got this chorus, or I've got this, riff. And then it makes it so easy, because instead of, I've come up with all kinds of amazing riffs, but don't know where to go with it. And a lot of times that's just the end of it, So when you've got 5 other guys with an amazing talent for taking that one riff and creating and building around it, Sweet Baby Jesus was probably one of them that was probably done. But our next song that's coming out is a song called Rain. I think it'll be our last single before we release the whole record. That song Rain was I just had like 30 seconds. This is what I've got. And we created this unbelievable song around it. And it's just like, that makes it so easy, when you've got guys that are, that are that professional and that good. It's just, and none of us there's no egos whatsoever. If somebody says, hey, let's try this, man, we're all over it, because I've worked with people that, no, this is how I wrote it. I don't want to change it. It's like, you don't know, man. We always say that there's no wrong ideas, just better ones. There's just better ideas. And we would knock out a song a day. We really would. It was that easy because it just came natural,
Nice. And was did the movie Talladega Nights have any inspiration on the name Sweet Baby Jesus?
No. Peter was just joking the other day going, I wonder how many Christian stations we got on and quickly taken back off with the name Sweet Baby Jesus. Yeah, well, that was those lyrics are Gary's lyrics. And when he first came in, he said, that song's going to be called Sweet Baby Jesus. I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, when you meet that girl and you just go, Sweet Baby Jesus, you're beautiful. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. And it's really, and it's so cool. I just, it's perfect,
Nice. And then you mentioned, the album, is it complete and ready to be released then?
It's done. We got a few more things we're mixing on it. We literally, I think we have 12 songs maybe. I don't know if all 12 will be on there, but yeah, there's 12 songs. And we had to stop writing because we just were like, look, if we don't stop writing, we're going to end up losing a lot of really good songs because we've got more good songs. You know what I mean? So we didn't want to lose that. We wanted to get these songs that we know are a great collective together. We wanted to get that out. And let people hear that this is what we did right now. And I mean, I really honestly think that we've probably got another 10 records in us easily before we start going, I don't know, I don't got anything to you, because there's just so much material that we haven't even touched, you know, which is a really good thing to have, right? I mean, you know, it's to play with these guys who I just have nothing but respect for, and to just realize that, you know, and the music's good, because there's a lot of really amazing groups that put all these guys together, but they just don't really have the tunes, you know, and that's important, right? You obviously got to have good music.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. And then, so is there a name yet for the album, or?
It took us a year to get a band name. So now you want to, you know, it's probably just self-titled. We really don't know. I mean, we haven't really got that deep into it yet. I'm sure it's going to come up pretty soon though, because we're going to, you know, it's funny how we've been releasing a single every 6 weeks. Sweet Baby Jesus has been out 2 weeks now, and they're already getting all the stuff for Rain together right now, because they're like, it takes that long to get it ready to go. You know, it takes like 4 to 5 weeks. So right after that one comes out, I'm sure they'll start going, okay, what are we doing? We got to figure this out. But right now, probably just self-titled.
Gotcha. And then no idea of date for the release?
Not really. I mean, it's, you know, it's a strange world we live in now, because when you and I were listening to music, you'd buy the record and you'd play it over and over and over and never stop listening to it. You'd read all the liner notes and look at all the pictures. You know, in the society we live in now, kids listen to it. Kids meaning, you know, adults, kids, whatever. And then 10 minutes later, they're on to something else, you know. So there you go. So we realized that in order to really get the most out of this music that we've worked really hard on this. And we want to make sure that if we do a song and then push that song, we go to another song, push that song. So it's kind of the, you know, the way you do things now. You kind of release it a little bit, and then when you go, okay, I think people get what we do now, let's go ahead and put it out. So I think maybe end of summer, maybe. Oh, it's getting to be summer. Yeah, maybe middle of summer, end of summer, hopefully it'll be out.
Nice. And then you were saying that you already got some dates lined up to tour.
Yeah.
To help promote it. Where can fans like find out more about like where to check you guys out at?
So we have a website, closeenemiestheband.com. That's all that, pretty much all that stuff's on there. Of course, we have our Facebook page. Also, if you do go to our Facebook page, do us just like you, do us that little like button. It's just crazy how now that's so important to pretty much anything and everything that you do. You know, people want to know, well, how many likes do you have? How many of this do you have? And it's harder for us, because let's face it, a lot of people that listen to our music don't even go to Facebook. I mean, they don't even go to this. They just, you know, and
I feel your pain, man. I try and promote this podcast, but I'm not like a little TikTok girl, you know, doing a dance or anything. I hate getting in front of the camera, honestly. I mean, this has been therapeutic for me, you know, just having these conversations.
It's a whole nother level that you and I just are not used to. You know, I mean, my daughter, she'll make me a TikTok video in about 2 minutes and she'll give it to us. You know, Chasen does all of our stuff right now because, you know, he's 50 and he's way more hip on it, you know, and Peter's learning really well. And it's really hard, you know. I mean, we would never ask Tom and Tony, because I know those guys have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, it's because it's just not our thing, you know. I mean, if you got a computer question, I call my daughter. That's the first thing I do. You know, you got to call your kids because they're the ones that have all the answers.
Yep. But yeah, so that's the plan then. I mean, you're obviously, you know, right now you're busy on the road with AC/DC, but when that wraps up, then you guys are gonna during that downtime. Close Enemies has some dates set.
We have like our first 3 shows are in June. I have a break between US and Europe. So like June 12th, 13th, and 14th, we're doing Cincinnati on the 12th of June. 13th, we're doing, I think it's Noblesville, Indiana. And then 14th is out like Detroit area. So you have to go to the website to be exact, but we're just doing those 3 quick shows. And then we go to Europe with this for, I think 2 months. And then when that shuts down, we're going to be doing every weekend, probably till the end of the year, hopefully starting in like September, October. So first we'll just do the Weekend Warrior stuff. And then we're doing some shows with, doing a really cool show in Chicago with Winger. That's going to be fun. We're doing some Tom Kiefer, LA Guns shows. We're opening for those guys. It's just going to be, it's fun for Tom too. Cause Tom's he hasn't played clubs in a really long time, and he's having the blast. He really is.
Nice. Going back to the roots, man.
He loves it. At first, I remember we did this interview and he was saying how, I said, we're in a van. Like, he was excited about it. I said, Tom, the last time you were in a van, you were being taken to your limo, which was taking you to your airplane.
Or your hotel room,
Exactly. I said, now you're going to be in it for 4 hours to a gig. You're going to get there with, a really bad deli tray and do a show. But he's excited. He really is,
Gas station food and all that good stuff.
But, I mean, he's totally game. He's having a blast. It's just like, and we all believe in this, and people always say, they go, is this a side project? I say, this is not a side project. It's a band, because none of us have the time to do a side project. We're going to give it 100%. We're not going to give it 30%, So you won't, look on our website tomorrow and see a different drummer or a different singer. It's just not going to happen. If, it's us and this is what you got.
Well, I'm pretty stoked, man. I'm hoping that Cleveland date eventually ends up on your guys' itinerary. It'd be great to
what would be so they still have the Agoras going down there? Is that still a thing?
Yeah, the Agora's still going.
Is it Akron and Cleveland and both of them, or
just Cleveland? No,
just Cleveland. The Akron one's gone, because Akron Agora was a cool place too.
Oh yeah, that's been gone for a while. So yeah, you still got the Cleveland Agora. I mean, you got House of Blues. You got there's a place called Temple Live, which is pretty cool too. But yeah, I can see you guys definitely doing the Agora. That's a lot of history there.
That's so much fun. Those places are just, and it's like we're doing the Whiskey in November, and we're going to record the show, and we're going to do the Record Store Day next year. And we're going to release that live from the Whiskey on Record Store and vinyl. So, I mean, it's like, that's kind of full circle. Because I remember back in the day, in the 80s, trying to play the Whiskey, and they're like, it'll cost you $100, kid, to play here. Now they're paying us to play there. So it's pretty cool. Very interesting, full circle.
Nice.
Loving it.
Nice. Yeah. Well, Trace, before we get ready to wrap up, I want to ask you a couple questions that I normally ask my guests that I have on. I mean, we were having, we were getting into, some good conversations that could go off to other podcasts earlier on. But I like to know, like, what class do you feel should be mandatory before graduating high school today?
Oh, I think that's a really good question. Maybe economics, maybe. I think that because there's, like, my daughter has no clue when it comes to money. She has no clue. I mean, she has no clue. And I'm like, she's finishing her master's right now. It's just like, and I think that's very important. Absolutely. That, out of high school, they come a little bit more prepared, I never had any of that.
That's usually the number one answer I get, that in taxes,
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I think that's a good question. I'm glad I had a good answer, because I would have said something like gym class or something. Home ec. I need to learn how to make a cake.
Yeah. And then who are 3 people who have inspired you and you can credit for making you the person you are today?
Well, like we talked about, I think we're off the air before I said this. It was my father, of course, because he taught me, my father, like your father, were World War II veterans, and different class of people, man, for sure. And my father taught me a couple things. He said, number one is your hand shakes your word. You shake someone's hand, you look him in the eye, you tell them you're going to do something, you do it. That's it. And he said, you respect people until they give you a reason not to respect them. He goes, and then it's a whole nother story at that point. And I know exactly what he's talking about. So him for sure. I mean, honestly. And my brother, Michael, I mean, like I said, my older brother, who really, got me into this music business and, really kind of steered me to what I do. And it's all in the family. My sister, who's just passed away last year, again, she was always the one that would give me the pat in the back and say, you're doing really, really good. You hang in there and just keep going, and, you'll see what happens, So yeah, it's all from my family, which is good, because a lot of people don't get that, but.
Yeah. Yeah, you reminded me with that comment with the handshake and everything too. It's like me and my girlfriend have been watching the show Yellowstone, and it's like, you know, the old school ways, man, were the ways.
My father he worked for a Cadillac dealer, and he would, he'd sell somebody a Cadillac, and then next thing I know, they were putting in, countertops in our house because that was part of the deal, and they were just movers and shakers back then, and it's like,
yeah, the barter system. Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. You want a Cadillac, but you can't afford it. All right, what's it going to take? I think you put, you do countertops, right? So we would always get, we got a swimming pool, we got all kinds of cool stuff.
Nice.
But no, so really, and I really do live by that. I have nothing but I respect everybody. I think that that's really important, and I just my kids are the same way. They know that it's very important to do that.
Yeah, and I've really my journey in sobriety and recovery has really helped enforce that too. Living with rigorous honesty. You know, and let your yeses mean yes and your no's mean no.
Because there's so much of that just doesn't exist, and you know it as well as I do. And that's podcast number 4 we can get into, of how many times that's went sideways. But yeah, I just think it would be a lot better place to live if everybody just backed up what you said.
Yeah, I agree. And then any causes or organizations that you support and encourage others to check out?
Oh, man, now you really put me on the spot. I wish you'd ask Chasen this. He's Chasen. So our singer Chasen, he does all kinds. He's got a lot of benefit stuff that he does. So I should definitely get him to send you over some really cool stuff that he's got. I mean, I don't really have anything that that I guess, I don't know. Is that weird that you don't have anything any causes?
No, that's fine. I'll move on to the next one. I like asking, it takes everybody back. And other than your tennis racket, what was your favorite toy as a child?
I was going to say something funny, but I probably shouldn't. Favorite toy. Wow, give me like 2 seconds to think. Oh, I know what I liked. I used to have a vibrating football game. Do you remember those things?
Oh yeah. Like really loud metal thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, and obnoxious, and then you'd move across, and then I used to love that thing. Yep, yeah. And then I moved up from there to the little race cars, little slot cars. I love those.
Yeah. And then any message that you have for our military members that are currently serving overseas?
Thank you. I can't even. I mean, just so how much you guys are giving. I mean, I'm away from home. I talk to my family about this all the time. I'm away from home, but there isn't anybody shooting at me. It's a whole nother world, because they know I'm coming home, and they know that it's pretty likely I'm going to get on that plane and go there. And I know that they give up a lot, and I know that it's just the uncertainty has just got to be hanging over their heads all the time. And I think. And in all honesty, I don't think that our country does enough for veterans at all. And that's a podcast number 5, because, I'm the only person in my family that was never in a war. I have 3 brothers and a father, and they were all in wars, every one of them. And I was the only one, that wasn't in military, because I chose this, So yeah, I have nothing but respect for sure. You're Navy, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So was my brother. My brother was on the Nimitz.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was on the Theodore Roosevelt. I worked on F-14s when I was.
So did he. That's so cool. Yeah.
That's
what he was out there when they did that. They did a movie on the Final Countdown on the Nimitz, and he was on the ship when they filmed.
My squadron was on that. It was before I joined. Wow. But I remember the VF-84 Jolly Rogers with the skull and crossbones. Those F-14s were in that movie.
I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't work on them long before you. That's probably because that's what he did. He was a jet mechanic. So
wow.
I have to ask him. Ask him.
Wow, we had a lot of connections there in this, man. It was a great conversation. I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you, man. If anybody else appreciates what we've talked about, and it does anything for anybody, then thumbs up.
Awesome.
And again, I appreciate you, with to be able to do this and, just reach out to people, let them know that there is what we like to call classic music still being played. And, everybody can check it out. Go to our website, go to our Facebook page, and come see a show. It's really fun. And to see these classic, this classic rock band is so much fun. And it's just, and I know we get nothing but praise from people. Anyone who's ever seen us live has been like, wow, you guys are pretty rocking, so there you go. So, and I hope to see you in Cleveland.
I'm excited for a Cleveland date. I'll definitely be there.
You got it. I'm going to hold you to the members. Shake my hand. Look me in the eye. Now you have to be there.
I'll do that. Hopefully Sean will be happy and we'll be able to make it happen.
You got it, my brother. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate you, buddy.
All right. Thanks again for your time, man. You take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Big changes are coming to the Boondoggle in 2025. New year, new logo,